Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Hell Let Loose Dev Diary. I'm excited today to be joined by two of our incredible developers to talk about our brand new 50v50 game mode coming to Hell Let Loose a little bit later this year called Conquest. I'll also go over in a little bit more detail about how you can jump into the mode a little bit early to test it out and give us feedback about what you would like to see in this mode. So, what is Conquest and what makes it different from what we already have in Hell Let Loose? At a high level, Conquest is focused on sustained territory control over time. With 5 capture points available across the map, Conquest differs from warfare and offensive by allowing all objectives to be captured in any order at the same time. This removes linear front lines and encourages flanking, counterplay, and strategic decision making. Winning in Conquest is not about one big push. It's about consistently applying pressure, holding key territory, and managing losses across the entire match. In Conquest, all captures take 2 minutes. Player numbers determine who is capturing, not how fast the capture happens, which means positioning and coordination are just as important as raw numbers. Conquest is also going to feature something new that we have called morale. Morale is lost in 2 ways. The first is through morale bleed, where one team controls the majority of objectives. The larger the objective advantage, the faster morale drains. Second, morale is lost whenever a player redeploys. Whether due to death or manual redeployment. This makes survival and teamwork especially important throughout the match. I'm now joined by some of the Hell Let Loose developers to talk a little bit more about Conquest and their design process when creating this brand new game mode.
Hey, I'm Xander. I'm a game designer working on Hell Let Loose.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm the creative director working on the Hell Let Loose franchise. With the Conquest mode, there's a couple of key points I just want to talk about before we get into the detail. One of the reasons that we thought about including Conquest mode into the game was that we're always looking at adding new game modes that add more choices for you as the player. Maybe slightly different ways to play Hell Let Loose, but that retain the core Hell Let Loose experience. So 50 versus 50, combined arms, armor, recon, infantry, commander, and all that good stuff.
So Conquest went through a lot of different iterations. We wanted to try and experiment with this game mode and try and figure out some fun niches it could fill that currently weren't existing in Hell Let Loose at the time.
It's much easier, we have found in development, to really push the boundaries almost too far and then pull back from that point to sort of finalize on a sweet spot.
We originally wanted to put an emphasis on attrition and limited resources. So we had this game mode, which was 12 capture points, which is quite ridiculous. But you had to fight over each one, and each one would give you set amounts of resources. Now, we did try that, and there was fun there. But it felt very, very overwhelming for the commander, and it felt very easy for one side to get a clear advantage over the other. We also tried prototyping a game mode, which was basically just warfare mode, but with a morale system. But once again, that didn't really work out so well. It kind of happened where one side would sort of get the first middle objective and just super bunker down, and then even if the opposing team broke through it, they usually wouldn't have enough morale left to sort of maintain the fight. So that's why we started looking at a game mode that had multiple objectives, because that's not something we've really done in Hell Let Loose before. One where there's multiple different points that you could go to at any given time. You know, normally when you've got like offensive, you've just got the 1 point. You've got to attack or defend. Or in warfare, you've got the 1 point to attack and the 1 point to defend. In this game mode, we wanted to use that as an excuse to give players different options and different things, different directions they sort of kind of go in. So for example, maybe you're trying to attack 1 point as a squad, but it's just too heavily defended. Maybe there's just things not working out in your favor. It's just not worth the effort. So maybe you think, oh, I know, let's just flank around to the south and go for an objective over there instead. Maybe we can try and get more and contribute more by doing that. And that's the kind of gameplay that we really sort of latched onto. That fills a niche that we didn't have before, and I think there's a lot we can work with that.
I would say probably the largest challenge is to make sure that the fundamentals of the communication between the squad leads and the commander are familiar enough with the players. So what I mean by that is because we have a lot more CPs active, it does put a lot more pressure and importance on that communication between the commander and the squad leads. And that's because the commander has to orchestrate which squads have to attack or defend which CPs. And because there's more of them, that means there's more constant communication all happening simultaneously. And that puts a lot more pressure on the command chat. One of the key things we want to do with the morale system is to try and experiment, and we're constantly evolving and iterating on this system. A system where, as the player, as a squad lead, for example, you're much more mindful about when to attack a CP that you're fighting over. One of the things that we all experience while playing Hell Let Loose is there are times where almost the sheer weight of players, and you're less concerned about the casualties involved. But with this morale system, you do have to be a lot more mindful. It's a lot more emphasis, I think, on the second-to-second, moment-to-moment tactical play, because every time you take a casualty, that's going to negatively affect your morale for your force. So a little bit more thinking about the cover, a little bit more thinking about the squad working together to try and minimize the risk to the squad. And importantly, always make sure you have a medic on your squad. And we all know sometimes in Hell Let Loose, that is, or can be, an undervalued role within the squad.
So the way it works at the moment is whoever holds the majority, dying means that you lose morale, but also whichever team holds the majority at the moment, they inflict a morale bleed onto the losing team. And the more objectives the winning team control, the more intense that bleed effect will be. So if you've only got 3 out of the 5 objectives, you're going to put a bit of a morale bleed on the opposing team, not too much. But if you took all the objectives, you wouldn't win the game outright, but it certainly wouldn't be very good for the opposing team. So an important thing to iterate about Conquest mode is that nothing is set in stone. Like, we're really open to see how your feedback comes in, and we can work based upon it. So we're considering adding a few different mechanics and systems to the game at the moment. So, for example, we're debating adding a commander ability that could potentially stem morale loss. Maybe it's just for your side. Maybe it means that while you can't lose any morale, you also won't be able to inflict any morale loss upon the enemy team as well. Something like that. Something that gives the commander a tactical decision to make. One that means that you could use in a key moment to sort of claim an objective without worrying about any morale loss upon your own units. We're also debating some potential catch-up mechanics as well, or recovery mechanics. Maybe if, like I mentioned before, if one side is losing too badly and they feel like they're in an unwinnable situation, maybe there'd be some way to reclaim morale, for example. Maybe capturing some objectives back would either give them some morale back or maybe stem the morale loss so it's not quite as bad. Something like that. But again, we're all completely open to any ideas and any feedback from the community. So we're really excited to hear from it.
The key thing that we really need the community to help us with is by play testing the game in a different manner maybe than what we play tested. We've been play testing this game mode for quite some time now, but we're very aware we play the game a certain way, and we're always going to play the game as developers, right? What we're interested to see is how other players play the game mode a bit differently than maybe what we have. In particular, how do people find multiple CPs all open at the same time? And then the second area that we really need feedback on is how are people finding the morale system? Is it changing the way that you attack or the way you defend those CPs? Is it altering that moment-to-moment tactical play of Hell Let Loose?
So in games like Warfare, for example, you can do the tug of war for the whole game, but in theory, even if your team is losing and you've been losing the entire time, a good push could turn things around at the last second. Because morale is a fixed rate, it means that if your team lost a lot, that instantly puts you at a disadvantage versus the enemy team. Now, it is possible to recover from that, and we've seen that in our own internal games where the losing team has been down by a fair amount and they've managed to fight back, reclaim the territory, and win in the end. But of course, you can only do that so many times without getting an idea of how balanced it is. So one of the things that we really hope we can get from these experimental tests is a better gauge on how balanced that is. Even the most balanced game mode, there's going to be some games that are complete stomps one side or the other. But we want to make sure, and that's a really key point that we want to ensure with Conquest, is that you always feel like you could recover and you could win, because morale is a fixed amount. It's not something you can get back. We don't want players thinking, uh-oh, we're massively behind the morale. What's the point? We've definitely lost this game. That's not what we're going for here. And one of the key bits of feedback we need from the community is that the case, and is there anything we can do to sort of remedy that? Because Hell Let Loose is always a game where there's always a fighting chance. There's always a way that you could swing it back no matter how bad it gets.
As commander, I'm also really interested in, is it better for your side, your force, to have more infantry units or more armor units, or a combination of the two? I think one of the key things that we want to do with this game mode that we'd love feedback on is from the server owners themselves. So do you envisage that you would like to include this type of game mode into your server mix? So to offer that to players as part of the 50 versus 50 Hell Let Loose gameplay? And are there any particular tools or devices that you would like to have to enable you to tailor this game mode to your own preferences for your server? So we're always interested in any feedback from the server owners themselves.
Late last year, we launched our experimental branch over on Steam, and this is where the Conquest testing will be taking place. All you need to do is head to Steam, go to the properties, and then select the experimental branch under the beta section. After a short download, you'll be able to jump in and play, either on one of the predetermined official servers, or you can actually bring over your own personal server onto the branch. We hope to see many clans, groups, and communities jumping onto the experimental branch to test out the new Conquest mode, and we will be linking forms below in order for you to send your feedback to us. Conquest mode is still very much a work in progress. However, this test is really important for us, being able to validate certain aspects of the game, but also allowing you, the community, to help shape the mode as it develops. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video today. Be sure to read the full dev brief over on our website, and we really hope to see many of you in the Conquest game mode over on the experimental branch. I've been Ben B, your community manager, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.